Friends, today we're talking about how not to take your art so seriously. But before we get into that, I just want to show you my new temporary studio space. We will be having another home. You can see all of the messy in the background. We are painting these peonies today. But I just wanted to show you I have a new setup. I'm really excited about the lighting, and this will be my new painting space for now. So, as I'm going through my favorite book, The Flower Color Guide, and choosing my reference here, I'm getting my desk set up. I'm thinking about the things I want to paint, the colors I'm going to use, and making sure I have even a candle here just for a little rest and relaxation. In the back of my head, I'm thinking about how not to take my art and my style so seriously. Looking at these fur balls definitely helps put a smile on my face. But we get to a space sometimes where we start to really worry about the end result of our art. You can see here that this doesn't look like the reference photo necessarily. The composition is there, there's similarities, but I've added in my own details, I've added in my own colors, and I just wanted to have a lot of fun with it. So I've got a number 12 round brush, I've got a dagger brush with a nice point, but you can use the brushes that you have. I just like to have a larger brush and a smaller brush. It really makes things a bit easier for me. So I'm going to start with the centers of my flowers. Yes, I do like to put those in first. A lot of people do petals first, and I don't know, it's just a preference. That way I can really showcase and highlight the beautiful center of the flowers and make sure that I reserve enough space for those so that they are not like that second afterthought or whatever you call it. So we're sketching that in just really light with a nice pointed brush, light pressure, so our lines are pretty thin. We're gonna do a second one here, and then that third floral is not open to us. We cannot see that center, so we're just gonna stick with 2. So my first tip on how not to take your art so seriously is to paint often. I've found with this whole move, if you've seen my videos before, that we moved from one place to another, I had very little time to be practicing my art. And within that, I started to get this anxiety about my competence in painting compositions. It's crazy how quickly, if you're not practicing something, it starts to feel a little bit more foreign. Sometimes those thoughts start creeping in that are negative, that don't really help you in your practice. All right, so getting to these petals here, I've got a nice, beautiful pink color, and I'm looking at the center florals of my reference you can see on the left, and I'm painting in kind of darker those inner petals, and then we're going to do the outer ones a little bit lighter too. I'm looking for basic shapes, you guys. So do you have a teardrop shape? Is there a round petal? Is there one that looks more square? And I'm just trying to paint the outline of that right now. So now I dip my brush in water, I dab it, and I start to create the second layer of petals, the outer petals. They're a bit lighter. I'm using a technique of leaving white space in between just so that you can see between one petal and the other. And that's going to give me a good guideline for when I go back in, add in my shadows, and then I can start adding in some edges to show where one petal ends and the next one begins. But right now, that first wash of color on our basic shapes, we're not worrying too much about it. We're having a lot of fun. And remember, the joy is in that journey, in the process. So sorry you can't see my second floral here, but I am doing that same thing, the inner petals, and then just looking for the basic outline of these petals. These petals don't have to be perfect. These petals don't have to be exactly how you see it. As you'll notice, whatever my reference is, my final composition always has its own style. I don't copy. Even if I wanted to, it's my brain just kind of intuitively goes to what I'd like it to be. And that's the fun part, just choosing the colors, choosing the style, changing it up, and having a good time with it. So painting often, if you don't have a practice, if you don't have a space set up, it's going to be hard to have that practice. I suggest having a table that is all for your art supplies. You can leave them out all the time, and you will be able to sit down and practice whenever you want without the stress of thinking I have to haul everything out. Now, if you don't have that option, that's okay. Have a box, have a kitchen table, put them out whenever you can. But if you can devote a little space for you, I guarantee it just increases your motivation to sit down because you don't have to prep, you just get to it. So we're doing that side-facing floral now. And you've got some variations of values that I'm using. So just kind of painting at your own pace as well. I always encourage pausing the video if this is too quick for you, if it feels kind of anxiety provoking, just take a pause, take a break if it's too much. Remember to breathe. That's always my bottom line. Take a breath, let it out, remind yourself this is fun, it's practice, okay? So now I've got my dagger and I'm lining up the centers of the flowers with my little sketchy stem. So I took my green in my palette, I added some red if you didn't notice that, just to mute it down so it's more of that darker green, not so bright. And then I'm just following where that center of the floral is and where that stem should be attached behind and just sketching it down. I like to use the word sketching instead of just one continuous line, tiny little baby lines to get you where you want to go. So at this point, I'm really curious what you do. Do you have a studio? Do you have a table specific for your art? Or do you maybe paint at the kitchen table or something else? Sometimes people just like to have their painting stuff on their lap while they're watching TV. Let me know in comments how you paint. I'd be curious about what your setup is like. So now I'm adding some little oval shapes, and these will become our buds for our peonies. And I'm going to switch now to my dagger. Again, you don't need a dagger. Just get a nice little thin pointed brush. We're going to get these stems on here. If you guys are liking this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so that you guys don't miss out on new videos and offers and all those things. And I am on Skillshare where I have a referral code. It's linked below. And I've got several classes on there. I mix mental health with some of the floral classes that I've done so far. So you can check that out if you'd like to see some of my longer classes. Now, we are going to add in some leaves and just really think about looseness and allowing your brush to have a really light hold and let it move, let it squiggle around. So I've got more of that green here. So I always like to have a nice thin connector stem, and then I just start to kind of move that brush around, dab it on the paper, and really let that brush start to bring out those leaves. I'm not trying to make anything super precise, but just wanting to add some green in there. We can add some variations of green too. So one thing I want you guys to remember is if you're struggling with your composition, take a break, walk away, and remind yourself you can start again later, okay? So now you can see I've got some little lines, some sketchy marks. We're just wanting to fill this in with more greenery. And you can see that I'm kind of going off the script of the reference and just kind of doing what I think looks good. So you can add some red to your green to darken it up. You can add some lemon yellow to make it brighter. You could add some brown or black to darken it in a different way. You can add some blue to your green and to make that nice kind of evergreen color. So this is the part where, you know, it's that first layer of color, and you can always go in later and add a second one to just create dimension in all of that you are painting today. I do want to add some green here to my buds. Now my buds are still wet, so there's going to be a lot of spreading, and that's okay. You're going to see a lot of green with these buds and just a little bit of that pink popping through. All right, so the second tip for not taking your art so seriously, guys, is going to be to share your work with other people. So if you keep it to yourself and you don't want to open it up to possible scrutiny or possible thoughts that you might not agree with, or even appreciation for your art, you know, it's one thing to just keep it to yourself, but when you decide to share it and kind of get other people's perspectives or just let them know what you've been working on, it really helps you to relax and let go a little bit more, I think. I don't know if you agree with that. Let me know in comments. How do you feel about sharing your artwork with others? Sometimes people have some opinions that can feel discouraging, and sometimes that can motivate us to, you know, change how we're painting, and sometimes it can demotivate. So curious what you think about that. But definitely sharing in terms of a gift, gifting your artwork to people, it just gives you a higher purpose than saying, okay, well, I'm just going to have a giant stack of of drawings and paintings that I just keep in my drawer. So it's something to think about. Now I'm adding in some fluorescent pink here. I've got a number 6 round brush, and what we're wanting to do is add dimension. We're wanting to add more of that shadow. So I'm looking at my flower and I'm just kind of in an asymmetrical way putting in some different marks. I like to start with that center and go out. I'm doing these little scribbly marks. I press with my brush just to create some contrast there. So sometimes you can use light pressure for some light squiggly scratchy marks, and then you can press down with the belly for some thicker marks too. If you don't like a really bold mark, you can take water, clean your brush, dab it, and then just spread out some of those marks just to create more of a lighter mark as well. So you can use one color or you can use multiple colors as well. I really am trying to make sure that these florals pop, and sometimes less is more. So this is just a practice here. For this side facing, I decided to kind of start with the base of some of these petals and then add a little bit of that bright color just to create the definition. And you can see already it's starting to kind of stand out a little bit more and look pretty interesting. And sometimes I'll leave the tops of the petals that lighter original color, so you've got that contrast, which is so important when you're creating these florals. Okay, so the third way to stop taking your art so seriously, in my opinion, would be to use a lot of mediums. And if you love watercolor, maybe you want to try some oil, and maybe you want to try some acrylic, maybe you want to do some oil pastels, some soft pastels, or maybe some drawing colored pencils, markers. Just really play around with some of that. Maybe you want to add a lot of that mixed media feel to your artwork, because if you start playing and practicing, the point is that you're doing a lot of art often, and it's going to take that pressure off, and it's going to give you some more pleasure because you're going to experience some mediums that you do love and others that you don't. But when you find the ones that you were surprised that you love, it's going to give you more options when you sit down to create. All right, here I'm just darkening up some of my greens using some beautiful colors, some blue green, some yellow green, and darkening up the green on my buds, of course. So this is giving more of that contrast, just like we did with our flowers here. So I hope that you're enjoying this video, and I hope that you are learning a lot. Let me know in comments if there's one thing that's standing out for you. I'm now going in, now that the flowers are dry, and I'm actually etching out the edges of some of these petals so that you can see that layering effect. To me, it looks very artsy, but you want to have paint that's pretty concentrated, that it's not runny, because it's going to stay put and it's going to create that beautiful contrast and that dark mark that we're going for here. So you can layer over the top of layers you've put on. As long as it's darker, it's going to show up. You're going to see it. And my fourth tip would be to paint for yourself. So if you are painting because of feedback that you've gotten from someone else on how you should be painting, what they think looks better. Maybe it's an art teacher that has a big opinion. Maybe it's a spouse. Maybe it's another family member or a friend. If you're painting for others and their aesthetic and what they're telling you is good, it's going to be frustrating because you will not be doing what you want to do. So if you paint for yourself, what you love, but mainly because it's helping you with self-care, you are going to experience a lot more pleasure in the process. When I was studying art therapy on my own, I realized that it's not about the end result, it's about the journey. And that's a big discovery I've learned in the last year, and I want to pass that on to you guys. So enjoy every moment and happy painting.